Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to start our webinar. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Johan Wildenboer, and I am the PR and Events Manager for CTU Training Solutions. I'll be your host for this panel discussion, and I'd like to start by welcoming our esteemed panel here today. Thank you so much to each and every one of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us here today. We trust that you will find the time here with CTU both enlightening and worth your while. The topic for the discussion today is career readiness and how to expand your horizons. But before we start, I'd like to introduce to you our panel of experts. We are really privileged and honored to have you all together here today. So please join me in welcoming, first of all, Ms. Confidence Dikgole, CEO from the Independent Examination Board, Dr. Shirley Zinn, author and non-executive director of several boards, Dr. Erna Gerrits, educational psychologist from the University of Stellenbosch, Dr. Jerry Gule, CEO of the Institute of People Management, Ms. Chantal Oosthuizen, executive director of the Cyril Ramaphosa Education Trust, Ms. Nicola Tager, Global Head of Careers at Investec, Janine Hills, CEO and founder of Authentic Leadership, and last but not least, Ms. Glenda Jumeirah, Founding Director and Specialist Wellness Counselor from Stress Exchange. Thank you and welcome everybody. Then, before we start the discussion, I'd like to introduce CTU by means of a short video that we're going to play. And through this video, we'd like to tell you more about who we are, what we do, our qualifications, and the programs that we offer. Okay, thank you very much. Then I think we can all agree that we live in uncertain and challenging times in our country at the moment. And education plays a very important role in making plans for the career that you wish to pursue once you graduate. So actually, it's to start as soon as you can. Students enroll in a course far too frequently due to parental pressure or a lack of awareness about job opportunities. This could play a role in the rising unemployment rate And during the move from education to the workplace, young individuals must make informed professional decisions. Young people's skills and qualifications are mismatched with job needs as a result of ill-informed decisions. And in a student's life, making an uninformed professional choice takes precedence over merely studying and getting ready for the future. So making the wrong decision might have negative impacts and effects if the required support and guidance are not provided at the right time. I've prepared a few questions which I'm going to direct to the panel members. The audience is also welcome to participate, so please type your comments, raise your opinions, and ask questions in the chat box, and we will do our very best to address and answer your questions at the end during the last 30 minutes. I'm going to start with the first question. Considering the high percentage of youth unemployment in South Africa, and it's shocking to say that currently it's more than 30%, what is the right thing to consider in our struggle to combat unemployment, and why? I'm going to first come to you, Nicola, to hear what your thoughts and opinions about the first question.
Thanks, Johan, and thank you very much for the opportunity to engage like this. I think, it's a supply and a demand issue in our country, to be quite honest. There has to be demand in terms of job opportunities for people. So no matter how skilled people are, if our economy doesn't grow, job opportunities are not going to grow for people. So that's a concern for us. From a skill perspective, we can't lose more talented people in this country, because we need those people to help us craft other opportunities. We also need the right platforms for entrepreneurs to create the demand in terms of talent. So we need the government to work alongside corporate and alongside other parties to allow entrants to come into new businesses seamlessly and easily in order to start to craft new organizations and spaces. And then in terms of the supply space, I think it's really around education. And I don't think it's around the level of universities, etc. I think it is education from grassroots education. People have the right in our country to have access to education. And there are many, many issues, obviously, around the education system in South Africa. But I think it has to start. Education system on the one hand, in order to create the supply of great talent for the future of our country. And at the same time, we've got to get the economy kicking. So we've got opportunities for people to move into so we don't lose that talent in time. So those would be my two critical aspects that we should be considering.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. That's certainly very important and something for us to consider and think about during this difficult time that we are being faced with. Chantal, I'm going to come to you. What's your opinion and your views on this question?
Johan, I think that Nicola has summed it up perfectly. We have such great problems around unemployment, and youth unemployment is critical in our country. If I had the answers as to how we can address that, I guess I wouldn't be sitting here, I'd be running our country perhaps. But the fact of the matter is that there is this I think that there's a great rift or great divide between education and economy. There's a great divide between what is required. And a lot of our, I deal a lot with graduate unemployment. So if we talk education, we've got people who are getting an education but not finding the employment. And I think it speaks greatly to something else we may discuss a little later, and that's in ensuring what qualifications people are getting. But, I deal with bursary students, and I see the number of it's infuriating actually, because when our youth are applying for a bursary or applying to university, you'll see that on their application forms they're applying at, let us say, Wits University to study engineering. Their second choice is law, and their third choice will be accounting. And I find that infuriating, because somewhere there has not been enough discussion around a career choice and how they're making that choice. And that's the problem. If we have I don't believe we have to be thinking about the future and the future of work, what our economy requires, the skill set that's going to need. When we talk about apprentices, artisans, and the fact that our country is lacking in those skills and developing some of those skills, it's something that has to be addressed. And I think that we're all responsible for trying to do that. And that is as parents, as youngsters, as elderly people, as members of this community, and as leaders, we have to be addressing some of these challenges.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Yes, I think that's certainly some of the important issues that we need to consider, that if we had the answers, as Chantal said, we would not have been here, but we would be running the country. So those are certainly big questions, and that's not easy to find answers for those questions. Dr. Zinn, I'm going to come to you to hear from you what's your opinion, or what do you think, what could be our possible approach in our struggle to combat employment as we're faced with it at the moment?
Thank you very much, Johan, and good afternoon all. I think this is a very complex matter that we are grappling with here, and I think we are doing a huge disservice to our youth, especially to have them in a situation where we have this incredible unemployment, especially of our youth in South Africa. And I think there are multiple strategies that we can put into place to actually deal with this, and it needs to go back, to the root causes for this problem to start off with. And we need to look at the socioeconomic challenges and how we build a brighter future for our young people. And I think that strategies like focusing on skills development, strengthening the foundations of our education, infrastructure, systems, opportunities, access, and giving young people not just hope, but tools and tips to succeed in the job market, or alternatively look at opportunities of developing them to become entrepreneurs and start their own businesses. So we truly do need to invest in industries that create jobs, that ensure that that people have dignified and decent earnings. And there's so many opportunities to do this. And I just think about tourism, for example. If we invest in these kinds of industries, we can enormously contribute to alleviating poverty and inequality, and creating this much needed jobs, especially for our young people who fall into this incredibly high unemployment rate right now in South Africa. And I think there's been a lot of talk and a lot of research. I think the time has now come to actually say, let's just get together as business, not wait for each other, wait for government, or wait for anybody else, but ensure that wherever we are driving, building opportunities for our young people to access markets, or tooling them up to become entrepreneurs and giving them the necessary support to achieve those goals.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Zinn. That's certainly an important view in terms of how and what can be done. And I totally agree that the time has come for us to take action. I think we've talked about this many times before on many different platforms. But the challenge that we are faced with is still here. So we still need to consider how and when can we solve this, and what solutions there possibly can be. I like the fact that you talk about entrepreneurship as well. I think it's an important aspect that we need to focus on, and to guide our youth in a direction where they actually can be more employable, and where they can find opportunities after they've completed their educational studies. Dr. Gerrit, I want to ask you to also just express your view, or you have any other thoughts on the matter?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. And I do agree so much with the panel members, Nicola and Chantal and Dr. Zinn. I do agree with career counseling more earlier in school already, and that we are not actually equipped to address the need that our youth has. And on an institutional level, there's lots to do in terms of our education as well as on government. But I want to maybe come back to the individual and say there's employment on the one side, but there's another construct, employability, which I think often people take a reactive approach to. There's no employment, so where do I sit? And it's a hopeless case. But I want to maybe address, students and individuals in this forum and say, but what can you do as an individual to be more employable? And employability is something that is concerns the individual. What can you do proactively to improve the situation? And then it comes back to what Dr. Zinn said in entrepreneurship. What do I have? My skills, my abilities, and sometimes it's not, something that's very far and unattainable, but something that I can do since I was very young. And how can I, make that in business? There's definitely hope for individuals that wants to be employable. What makes us employable? Things that we can do apart from what we necessarily study in. So so the whole question of employability is huge for me. Where students can actually say, but it's not hopeless. What can I as an individual proactively do? And there are lots to do. Yeah, we can talk more about that.
Thanks, Anna. Yeah, certainly. I think that's an important aspect that we need to focus on. I think it's also something that we need to make our youth understand from an early age, to understand the environment that they're in, long before they even decide on a direction or an education or a path in terms of what they want to study, but understand the environment that we're in and how they can make themselves employable. I think it's certainly our responsibility to educate and train our youth in that regard as well. Confidence, I'm going to come to you just to hear your opinion as well, if you have anything else to add or any insights to share on that question.
Thank you, Johan, and thank you for the opportunity to be part of this panel this afternoon. I think my former panelists have actually touched on a number of things I would have wanted to talk to. But I think I just want to highlight one area, particularly because I'm in the sort of basic education schooling environment. And I think when we talk about high youth unemployment rate, without looking at the root causes in our education system, it would really be a huge mistake. So I think we need to look at our education system and check whether the curriculum that's offered within our schooling system, basic education, is still relevant, really. In other words, is there a link between curricula that's offered in schooling and what then is offered in higher education or further education and training? If there's a disjuncture between the two, we're going to continue to produce learners or students who do not have the relevant skills to translate into higher education and to translate further education and from there into the work, the world of work. And I think the Department of Basic Education has been for a long time talking about this, the three streams model, where they talk about, in addition to the academic model that we all are aware of, but they talk about the vocational model and the technical model. And I think it's about time that we stop talking about those, but implement, so that we begin to channel learners into different streams, so that we don't just, I mean, it's not every learner who's sort of designed or tailor-made for academic university type of qualification. And so if we want to improve employment problem in our country, we need to look into that. But at the same time, and I think I want to touch on what Dr. Zinn said. No, it's not Dr. Zinn, it's actually Erna, where she talked about employability. And I want to extend, I agree fully with you there, Erna. I want to extend it a little bit to talk about, should we rather not change the mindset and begin to talk about how else can you, as a student, contribute towards the economy of the country? It's not only about, when you talk career, it's not only about being employed, it's about what skills do you need to be able to create, to be a disruptor, to be able to employ. I think we need more about that. And so it takes me back to the issue of skills. Let's equip these students with the correct skills for them to be disruptors, for them to create, for them to employ, and not just wait for somebody, for government to employ them or somebody to employ them. Thank you.
Thank you, Confidence. Yes, those are certainly very important points. And I think we can all agree that there is a disconnect between our basic education, and by the time that our students or young people, reach a level of tertiary education, but they're not always adequately prepared. And it's certainly something that we need to look into and see how and where we can provide support to help students to be better prepared in that regard, and to be more practical, I think, as well. Most certainly, university education might not be the solution for everybody. So we certainly need to look at other possibilities or other avenues of where our youngsters can be educated and to make them more employable in order to move into the workforce and be successful. Thank you for that confidence. Okay, then I want us to move on to the second question, and I think making an informed professional decision takes priority in a student's life over merely studying and preparing for the future. But how can we guide prospective students then to make the right decision, to ensure that their choice of qualification matches the workplace requirements or demand? And I think we have touched on some of those issues already, but it's certainly important to come back and to say, well, how do we match this up? I mean, how do we support our students or our young people to make the right choice or choose a qualification which will match the demand? And I think, Anna, you talked quite a bit about, sorry, Dr. Zinn, you talked about supply and demand, and I think that's something that we need to come back to maybe. Janine, I'm going to come to you and just ask you to share your thoughts on that question. Thanks.
Sure. From my side, having come from Kibera, Port Elizabeth, born and bred into an extremely poor environment, never had access to university. I was expected to be barefoot and pregnant and never achieve. It was just not part of the gambit. I didn't come from an educated family at all, and we were never encouraged. But there was something inside of me, and maybe to the students that are maybe listening or whatever, it's something within inside of you that you want to become better. And that you want to instill something within yourself, that you want to either pull yourself out of an incredibly dark area, maybe the life that you have been exposed to is just not for you and you want to get out. And that was my driving force, to get out of an incredibly dark and violent environment. And I couldn't get access to education. So the first thing I needed to do from the age of 13, I started to learn skills by myself, is I needed to learn how to understand accountancy. I needed to understand, and I used to volunteer my time. I used to go to little businesses and work over weekends, work at night, cycle 15 kilometers to businesses to not get paid. In fact, in some instances, I got 50 cents. 50 cents. It was not even pocket money. And these were growing stepping stones. And I remember, sure, my first job was a receptionist at Port Elizabeth Holiday Inn, which was the first multiracial hotel in South Africa. And I chose that specifically, and I didn't want to work at any of the others, not in the 5-star fancy hotels. I wanted to work in a multicultural environment. So at that very young age, between 15 and 16, I made a very personal decision to know where the country was going, and I wanted to make a change. And I think that's what we as young people, and I still classify myself as a young person because I believe we can all as leaders inspire the young people moving forward by the mistakes we've made or the lessons that we've learned. And after, it was quite interesting, I wasn't chosen into the hotel and hospitality industry because I wasn't educated enough. 6 months into working at the Holiday Inn, very funny, they all came charging to offer me jobs. I turned them down. Why? Because I earned more money on the ground. So I got wise to this decision, and I started saying, hold a minute here, I can learn to become an entrepreneur. But the key thing is one has to have that fire within yourself, that fire to want to do. And sometimes it's going to be incredibly menial. I mean, I have done things, I will tell you stories in this panel that'll make you shiver. Some of the washing hair, sweeping streets, cleaning dishes, picking up golf balls on golf courses, working in the Pam Pam disco, late at night, running 3 jobs a day. I think this is a reality of what we've got to be able to inspire ourselves. And yes, at the age of 40, after working In corporate, I then moved myself into running my own company. Why? Because I had learned the lessons through corporate. And so I think we've got to be educated, but we've also got to have the fire within and determination to be able to want to change. And those opportunities are there. Yes, it's tough. Johan, to go back to your question, it's tough. It's not easy, but we can do it. And we must inspire other people to do that. Glenda, I think, wants to come in there. Johan?
You know what? Why Glenda is coming through? Why I just what Janine has just said. I look at where I grew up. I grew up. My shining example of what a career looked like was a guy who was a security guard in a forestry area where I grew up. And I looked up at this man and said, "That's when I grew up. That's what I wanted." That was my role model. Then I moved into another part of town, and then I saw other things that were happening there. Then I said, oh, there are things called, when I started school, there are things called teachers. Maybe I want to be a teacher. So I totally agree with Janine that sometimes the role models, the people around us, what they have done, and unfortunately, and I must say it's unfortunate this, that today the people that epitomize, that are seem to be role models that I think, in my view, given the values that I hold, are leading us down the wrong path. You know, we have people who are robbing others, who are gangsters, who are, unfortunately, are seen as role models. And I can say that kind of life is not a role model. So the young people here, and I was just, Johan, looking at the stats on, I mean, the problem of youth unemployment is big on our continent, 60%. This is a young continent and 60%, but today we're talking about here in South Africa. I think the question of really saying to yourself, how can I pull myself up? And why do we work? We work because we want to make a living. I remember what my father taught. I mean, before I even started school, I knew how to milk a cow, how to make milk, and the kinds of things that I can do. I knew how to go out there and plant and get maize and make sure that you can eat, because to sustain the family. That stuff I knew how to cook. The time I was doing standard 4, my father taught me all those things. I could go to the mountains and look for veggies, edible stuff that you collect. So I think getting up and saying, I want to make a living. What can I do in my surroundings to make a living for myself and for my family is critical. And therefore, if I have a little bit of an education, how can I use that education, that knowledge, not playing on TikTok, yeah? How can I use that knowledge that I have to really make something of myself? I think that's, I'm encouraged, because I was listening to young people during the celebration of the independence, April 27 this time. I was inspired by what some of the young people have to say. The landscape has changed, that's for sure, but it always has to come from inside. Do I want to make myself a better person? What do I need to do that? And as a coach, I like the question. I'm no Johan, I'm running ahead here, but there's a question on coaching. Why is that important? Ask the elders around you, what can I do? Ask the other people that have gone the path, what can I do to make our community, make our home a better place? Do I really need a job to do that? Or is something that I can do myself to make this thing better? We can't lose hope, young people. We cannot afford that. Thanks, Johan. Back to you.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Jerry. It's certainly very, very true. But in my own mind, I think that, yes, I mean, and I'm sure many of us have stories like that to tell in terms of where we come from and who and what inspired us through our youth until we eventually ventured into something else and decided what to do and how to go about. But in my own mind, I always think, but how do we actually then go about? I mean, why is it that we find that majority of youth do not necessarily think that way, or that they're more inclined to be on TikTok or on social media than to try and find solutions and learn from their own environment? So my concern is then also, I mean, who are the role models that they're looking up to? And Is it that they not get inspired in such a way that they can make a difference or that they want to make a difference? Because for us, it's easy to say, okay, well, this and that, but if we look at the youth and how do we actually go about? So there was just a question, and I just want to read out this question that came through on the chat box. And the question asked, does the panel think using a platform like LinkedIn Learning would be the right avenue in making people more employable? So we live in a digital environment, and I think the youth hardly see beyond of what they're being faced with from their mobile phone or their laptop screen or whatever device they might be looking at. But how do we look at that then? I mean, how do we use the environment that the youth live in, and whether it's driven by a digital era, but then how do we use that to our advantage to help the youth to be more motivated, to understand that they need to develop their own skills, that they have to go out there and make a difference or find a solution. Let's share some thoughts on that, maybe. Anna?
Okay.
Yes. I want to start by saying maybe what I often find with students, I work with students daily, and what students often say, you know, what can I do? I don't have enough confidence. So I think platforms like LinkedIn, of course, is very helpful. And but as a previous speaker said, you know, we can be on digital platforms whole day and do nothing. You know, we are so intimidated by what everybody else does, and we start, you know, we spend our time, you know, looking and seeing what other people do, and it's not really a real portrayal of what they're actually doing, you know. And but let's come back to confidence. And what I say is, what I see with students is, they ask me, so I don't have confidence. You know, what can I do? So I want to say in terms of that, anything you do that gives you experience brings confidence. So you actually work at confidence. What if you can do anything that you haven't done before, you build up confidence. So even you know, making the first phone call to say, do you have jobs? Even, you know, going to meet anyone, a new person for coffee that you haven't even seen before. I mean, we sit at the moment with students that are so, or young people that feel so isolated. So approach your role models, approach a person that you know well, and make time to spend with them. So the more you do, the more your confidence will grow. Confidence doesn't come first and then you're able to do it. It's the other way around. You have to move and do something, and then the confidence comes.
Now, Dr. Anna, you make an incredibly insightful comment there. And I think that to the point of LinkedIn and other social platforms, which our young people find incredibly attractive, I think that is only one little aspect of how you can put yourself out there and connect with a broader network. And it's platforms like the one we're on here today. I think it's incredible, Johan, that CTU has put together a platform for a conversation like this with our students, so that we can motivate and inspire them and give them tips and tools on what it is that, you know, we have learned over our lives in terms of what is actually possible. And so you know, it's great that CTU is doing this, and LinkedIn and Insta and all of these things are just one small piece of it. But what we're trying to talk about here is a network of collaboration, of conversations, of role models, of mentors, of coaches, where you can learn a few technical things, and you can learn a few of the softer skills like communication, like how to collaborate, like how to show up at an interview, and prepare your CV, and to believe in yourself. And just a little snippet from my side, you know, I had teachers who I'm incredibly grateful to today. At the school that I was at, here in Cape Town, and I grew up in the Cape Flats. Matric was my entire, vision was to just get to matric and then go and find a job of some or other description to assist me and support my family. There were two teachers when I got to matric that sat me down and said, you know what, you are not shooting the lights out academically, but you have the potential to do so much more than you think is possible. And this is the message I want to put out there to our young people today. We have incredible potential, we have magic, we have talent, often locked up within ourselves, often not unleashed because we have this anxiety, because we lack confidence, because we are fearful of failure, and because we've been through adversity. So we need to build that through discipline, through determination, through dedication, through diligence. And you have that potential. Each and everyone has something that they can do in this life. And our roles here as role models, as facilitators, as enablers, is to unleash and give the opportunity and open the path for you to be able to experiences, whether it be through mentorship and coaching, through formal education, through informal education, through apprenticeships and internships, and on-the-job learning. A mindset that says I must continue to develop and grow. I must use this talent that I have available to me, and I must be committed to my learning every day, whether it be learning from other people, reading, watching the news, analyzing what's going on around you. It's important to not become stuck. And this is what happens to a lot of us. We run out of hope, and we feel this mismatch. And the more we try to do things, the less we can actually get traction. So I just want to say to you that you need to deliberately work on what is your passion, where is it that you think this magic lies within you, and try to move yourself forward. And sometimes it's not a linear move. Sometimes we have to go diagonally. Sometimes we have to go off the complete path. And I remember going home to my parents that night after that teacher conversation, and them saying, and the teacher said to me, go home and have a conversation about university. It was also, Janine, like you were saying, never in our worldview to talk about university, because it was about how we're going to find the next lot of money to pay for what we needed to pay. So, but those teachers changed the trajectory of my life forever. And so all I want to say is there are people along the way that we need to be listening to. Sometimes they come just at the right moment to give you a little bit of nudge, a little bit of motivation to say, you can do this. And it's very difficult out there, we know that. But we must never lose hope, and never lose that self-belief that will propel us forward despite the challenges, despite the adversity that we feel we currently are in.
Johan, can I just quickly come in on the LinkedIn question? And I think if I heard you well, the question is, can LinkedIn make students employable? And I just want to say, LinkedIn will not make anybody employable. LinkedIn will expose you to opportunities. But before you come to LinkedIn, you must come with all your skills, as Dr. Zin just said, and my former panelists, come with your skills, display them on LinkedIn. But on your own, like that, you wake up and you start scrolling and you're thinking, I'll be employed because I'm on LinkedIn. It's not going to happen. Equip yourself, learn, acquire knowledge, acquire skills, then come to LinkedIn. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to add to that, if you don't mind, Confidence, because I agree with you. But what technology is giving youngsters at the moment in our country is access to stuff that they don't have immediately accessible to them. So with that said, for example, if you cannot access a formal degree at a certain stage because of maybe financial reasons or whatever it might be, there is so much available to our youth because of technology. The same thing as if I don't come from a privileged family where people have been professionals around me and I cannot identify a role model. Through technology, we are able to create networks with people that are beyond our natural reach. And thirdly, it gives you a capability to research. So there are so many industries, and if you're not familiar with them through your immediate environment, excuse the noise in Investec, But it gives you an opportunity to go and engage with a broader network of people and research what other industries do, what jobs actually exist for you. So I'm saying technology won't do it for you, but it's a great platform to go and engage stuff that's not in your immediate vicinity.
Okay, yes, I just wanted to add what I think Nicola said about, I think Johan's question was, these youngsters, they use platforms like TikToks and Instagram, and how do we meet them at their point of interest? So I do understand Dr. Confidence and Dr. Zen, what they're saying, but maybe we need to look at it from a destigmatizing certain jobs. For example, using the same platforms to sort of destigmatize jobs like petrol attendants, cleaning, that will supplement to their career while they're at CTU or other colleges. Why don't we use such platform for mentorship, glamorize these jobs so that they start as an entry point to these students we're talking about. So as much as technology cannot find them jobs, will not help them be recruited at a scale, but it's a starting point, because that's where the interests are. We might try and avoid it. We might, yes, there is a scroll effect involved, but that's where they spend most of the time. So maybe it is now imperative that us as people in the industry look at these platforms and create digital economies around them. See how we can mentor students using platforms such as art. How to divert attention from maybe them being consuming the sort of the content that is not helpful to their career, but help them, mentor them using such platforms. So let's glamorize this, serving tea at offices. That's where they meet these mentors we're talking about. Being receptionists, that's where they meet these people we're talking about. So if we can use such platforms to meet them where their interest point is, and turn it into a mentorship platform, I think it's more scalable and cheaper. And also it will reach masses, because one way or the other, they do spend so much time on these platforms. So why can't we now use them as a point of mentorship?
Thanks for that, Glenda. Yeah, that's certainly something to think about. I think we often look at it from the young person's point of view, but now how can we look at it and how can we use this to our advantage to make ourselves or people with experience available to youngsters so that they can learn from us through the world or through this digital era, I think is certainly something to consider and to look into. And certainly, I mean, mentors and coaches can be met anywhere and on any level, and anybody can make a difference to a young person's life. And I think maybe we should also consider a mind shift in our own view of how we can and how we should support and encourage and motivate and give the youth more confidence through platforms and which they are already used to and which they use on a daily basis. Thanks for that. I want to move on to the next question, and I want to say that for those who are devote time to becoming career ready, and I think we've touched on some of that already, but they would certainly experience an easier time finding work. So if you know and you have the tools and you know how to make yourself more career ready, it's likely that it will be easier for you to find work. But career ready people feel prepared for success when they go for an interview, when they start working and use relevant skills. But what exactly is career readiness, and how do you get yourself career ready? So I think we have touched on some of this, and we've talked about employment. But if we focus specifically on career readiness, so what is it that would make yourself career ready? How do you go about? Dr. Jerry, if I can start maybe with you.
Thanks, Johan. You know, listening to this question and reading this question, the thing for me, if you're going to be ready for anything in life, you must have a learning attitude, an attitude that says, I welcome it in. Because when you start a career, you actually know nothing about it. That's all of us. I mean, we just don't know. It's the people that have run the race that have been ahead of us. And if we have an attitude of, I am here to suck it in, to take it in, you could be a cleaner. You're not ready to be a cleaner. Someone has to show you how to do that and to do it well. A sweeper, you don't know how to sweep well. You may leave stuff on the floor. So career readiness is just attitude stuff. Of course, you must have the basic knowledge, the basic skill, which we would have developed over time, like your communication skills. And we may not think it's important. I mean, I was actually horrified when I was listening to someone, and I don't know, you guys which work with students. I work with the students intermittently, not all the time. This person was saying, you know, young people can't communicate. They can't talk. They're just sitting on their cell phones. They can't even talk to each other. And that's, I know it's an exaggeration, it's a generalization. There are young people who are excellent at their communication. We know this. So it's a broad overgeneralization, but it's key. How do you come across as a human resources manager sitting, when I'm listening to people being interviewed, yeah, even if they are home language, yeah, tell me about yourself. That's gonna open doors for you for a career. Think about that question both in your home language and of course in English, which is the business language. You have to be able to talk about yourself. I was born there. These are the things that I enjoyed when I was growing up. Convince me. So career readiness is just your attitude. And of course, even sitting in that interview, your curiosity around the thing that you are looking for, the job that you are talking about. How curious are you? Because again, curiosity, learning, right? It's that learning attitude. I want to know more. I don't know everything. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, that's for life. As long as you want to grow your career, you've got to have that curiosity. You've got to have that attitude that says, we can actually take a chance on this lady or this man because their attitude is right. If that attitude stinks, your career readiness is gone. Let me end there for now, Johan.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Jerry. Yeah, no,
Have we lost Johan? Well, I saw Janine there, like going crazy. What do you like to add?
Can you guys still hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I think my earphones are not working. Let me rather just use the laptop. Thank you, Dr. Jerry. Absolutely. I think that's certainly something that we all need to think about in more detail, because often when we talk about career readiness, I think we think about many other things, but we're not necessarily come down to what is really important, and how can we really make a difference on that level. So as a youngster, what is it that you need to do in your own life to be ready, and like you said, to be curious and to find out and to have an appetite for knowledge and information on different levels and different jobs, that opportunities that might be out there. And yes, most certainly communication is something that's very important, and I think by just being able to express yourself more openly as a youngster is very important, and to make other people also understand what it is that you're interested in and what kind of information do you want and need. So definitely thanks for that. Okay, any other thoughts on that from any of the other panel members that wants to add to that?
I think Johan would be, Dr. Zinn, I was going to come to you, because I think to follow through on that, you need to have the necessary. So Dr. Zinn, the preparation is crucial. She started talking about it earlier on. So Dr. Zinn.
Thank you, Janine. You perfectly preempted me there. I was going to say, the first step in being ready for anything is the preparation, which has to be has to be clear, has to be focused, has to be meaningful, has to be purposeful, and deliberate. You're not just going to be ready just like that, you know. It's like anything in life. So you've got to be very clear about taking those first little steps towards preparation and the planning. And the first thing is fostering a mindset of how do I prepare myself for this? How do I get ready for this? And it goes beyond just the CV, which is a given. You must have a good CV, you must be able to interview well. So as Dr. Jerry says, you must be able to speak, you must be able to communicate, you must be able to influence, and have a nice rapport with people if you want to be successful here. So it's practicing those things. It's case studies. It's simulation. It's getting somebody to take you through a simulated interview. What does this mean? And taking the feedback and trying it again and practicing over and over again and doing the practical work. Because often it's, yes, I've got the CV, I've got the references, I've studied, I might have some certificates or diplomas or qualifications of various sorts, and I've got the technical learning. But, you know, is it transferable? Am I open to new options? Am I open to different options? So for me, I did all my qualifications in education and never thought I would be in human resource management in my life. But I was willing to take that little risk and step out of my comfort zone and say, yes, this is not quite what I had in mind, but let's give it a go. And that door opened in such a way that was just incredible. So it's really your technical skills, your experiential capability, but also your personal attributes. Like Dr. Jerry was saying, your curiosity, your adaptability, your resilience, and your understanding the career landscape that's available to you, or the entrepreneurial landscape, and doing the homework first, not just doing a scattergun approach to the thing, but really saying, where can I deliver the best value, and how am I going to make this happen? Who do I need to speak to? Sometimes I need to volunteer, as Janine was saying, to do things, which is what we've all had to do, I think, somewhere in our lives. Sometimes I have to do an internship. Sometimes I have to do the research. Sometimes I have to do a course. I can do online courses now as well. Many of them are for free and available. It's ongoing preparation that we have to do, because the world is moving at pace. None of us here has the luxury of relying on what we did 5 or 10 years ago. We've got to constantly be in a learning cycle and that learning mindset. So I just want to encourage all of you, even if you're in a particular path right now, open up your lens a little bit wider, and see what are the other things that are possible with where you are at right now, because this is what is going to enable you to transfer some of those skills and experiences into other places that you might not have anticipated. So really having an open-mindedness about what the possibilities are for yourself instead of closing it down.
Johan, if I may.
Yes, please.
If I may, Dr. Zinn, thank you for those words. And everybody has said such meaningful things here. I've made a whole lot of notes, and it's incredible what's coming out in this. I do think, though, that as we speak to the youth, I want for us to also remember that we have the responsibility, and it has been mentioned before, but we have a responsibility too, as perhaps leaders or within organizations, within corporations, big corporates. We need to listen to our youth. And I think that there's a very, very real need for us to listen. And it must be very difficult. I'm not young, sorry, Dr. Zinn, no, sorry, it was Janine. I'm not young anymore, I acknowledge this. But I think it must be frustrating to be a youth in our country that is constantly being dictated to by a very senior level of leaders and politicians and things. You know, I mean, and no disrespect here, but how old is our Minister of Youth and Children? And what do they actually know when we're talking about policies and strategies for 2050? When, you know, a number of us may not be around in 2050, but we want to be putting strategies together for 2050 that is impacting on our youth, but we don't listen to our youth. So I want to take this and say that even in large corporates, I've worked in organizations before where you don't ever get to see or speak to your CEO. I mean, that would just be because you're too junior for that. And where I work today, I love the fact that we have a very open policy. We like to, you know, I mean, it'll be lunchtime with the interns. Let's speak to them because that's how they can learn too. They need to be open to it, but we as leaders have to also be prepared to give of our time, our guidance. But you know, I think job shadowing, opportunities, anything like that is so important. And one of the other things we do within our organization is allow for our staff members to have the freedom to go and job shadow for a short while in another department, because it's incredible that, you know, I mean, I may have studied something, but I'm working here today and I realize that HR is something that I'm really interested in, and go and spend some time, because that's how you grow too. So you have to be open to that. And I know that a lot of managers aren't. So I just want to put that out too, like that we need to take responsibility also. Thank you.
Yes, can I just add it to what Chantel just said?
Sure.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
I agree with what she's saying in terms of job shadowing. So maybe just also to add what she said and what Dr. Zinn said. We're equipping our youth with soft skills. The fact that I will move you from one department to another to shadow. You learn interpersonal skills. You learn softer skills, how people communicate, how people present themselves on the broad, you know, spectrum of different departments and organizations. So I think I really like what you said about meeting the youth at their level, because even where we're sitting here, they should have some youth or student in this panel that give us the perspective on the ground. So yes, an inclusive society where we make decisions also taking account in the new norms, the new tech norms. How do they interfere with the new workspace? How do they maneuver? What does resilient in the new norm look like? It's different from maybe what all of us had. Dr. Jerry talked about how his father taught him how to do field work. It's different from now. Maybe I don't even have the field to give my child to do it. So how do we now create a new field of saying, this is a new field now? So the adaptation, what Chantel is talking about, very, very, very important. Let's, as much as we make decisions here in the panel as experts in different fields, as professionals, as mentors, but what does it look like to a young child who comes from Limpopo, somewhere there, who's never had such an exposure? How do we create an inclusive society that also take their background and what the new norms are into perspective? So, Johan, next time we have this, let's have our youth as part of the panelists. One or two.
I love it, and I'm gonna come up with a term for you, because you're speaking so much around skill, capability, and change. I think that there's a new term that people are utilizing. Well, I do when I'm speaking to youth, and that is no longer caring about a career path, but think about your career as a learning path. Your learning path is going to be far more important than your career path going forward.
Yes. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for that. Okay, so I think let's move on to the next question. And I think this is quite an important aspect, which I have often heard, and I think that the youth is certainly struggling with. So we often hear that new entrants to the workplace can't secure employment as they don't have any experience. So how can we incorporate career preparation and work-based learning into an academic curriculum? And I think we've already touched on some of those aspects, but I'm sure we've all heard it. But you know, I've applied for a position, but they're demanding a certain level of experience or a certain number of years of experience. Or how am I supposed to get a job if I don't have the experience? And how can we then incorporate that into a work-based learning or into an academic environment to help our students to gain more experience. So by the time that they apply for a job, that they can prove that they have some level of experience which was worked in or included into their educational studies. So let's maybe talk about that. Anna, if I can maybe come to you.
Thank you, Johan. So this debate between is it the responsibility of academic institutions to make people career ready, or whether it's the industry, responsibility, and how do we meet? So that's something that is a struggle, and we can always, do the blame to the other side, and academics say no, it's not our responsibility, and industry says okay, but the people that you sent us are not really, we can't do anything with them. They have only academic knowledge. So it's really difficult. We can't, for me, I often say to young people, because we can't change systems so easily. So I want to come to the individual level again and say, but what can you do to actually make yourself, more, employable again? So I would say, if you can do vacation work, anything in your holidays, anything that you can do that give you experience of anything. So if there are CVs with 3 people that has a degree in the same environment, say a CA or a BA or whatever, and there's one that's been in the workplace before, not necessarily because they had experience of years, but did vacation work, or used opportunities to work as a waiter, or get a pilot's license, or be a waiter, anything. So the more opportunities you use on an individual level, the more employable you are. So I would say that we're not going to change the the debate between industry and academic institutions, but come back to the individual level. Of course, there are the whole idea of, are universities and tertiary education institutions still relevant? I think that's something that needs to be addressed. I think we will see a huge change in the next couple of years with regards to that, and that's necessary. But it's not necessarily going to help the individuals we are working with on a daily basis. So what you can do is, and that's just to come back to what so many of the panel members said, your attitude, as Dr. Zinn said, examples like Dr. Jerry and Janine says, but this is how my life, how it worked in my life. So it's all about that. How hungry are you to change your life? And we often speak about career resilience. We have to be resilient, but I'm so, how can I say, specifically intrigued by this new term that's anti-fragility, meaning that you can be, resilient, and resilient is to bounce back. So you went through adversity and you overcome it in a way, and you bounce back to where you should be. But anti-fragility is to have yourself to benefit from the adversity you have. In what way that your adversity is something that you can work with, that it actually benefited you and make you as an individual very unique to do a specific task in this world. So that's why your whole story as a person, is so important to make you employable. So from if we look at career, sorry for taking so much time now. So, but from a career theory perspective, Mark Savick has said that before 8, you know what you came to do in this world. So deep down we know, I want to build, or I want to teach, or I want to, develop, helping to develop people. So it's all within us. So I want to say, come back to who you are and be your best self, and take that confidence and work towards something that makes you the best person. It's not waiting to get a job or sitting to, you know, for other people to help, but actually, you know, work towards your own solution in a way.
Okay, thanks. Any other thoughts on that? Anybody else that want to share?
Johan, I think very briefly, I would like to add that it is essential, and I think that it comes from an individual's resilience, I guess, or their hunger, as somebody said. But exposure is very, very important. And if we could encourage our youth to do that also. Volunteerism, so as has been said, if I see a CV and you're fresh out of varsity or fresh out of your qualification institution, and you have something to show, and our youth have to understand that too, because you have 2,000 engineers graduating in a year, and you may be the 60%er. What makes you stand out from all of the others when applying for a job? And I will always look at somebody who's done volunteerism, who's done job shadowing, who has been involved, or always had a side hustle. It is essential, and I think that we need to be able to encourage that. But, you know, I spoke to an HR person at one of our universities once, and they had said that they were really keen to promote the whole thing of linking faculties to NGOs in our country. We've got so many NGOs who struggle and don't have the resources to actually achieve what they need. And we had young students that were going in to help an NGO with their books, for example, or help them with some of their HR issues, or help whatever it is, but go and volunteer at an old age home, help with the caregiving. I just think that there is the opportunity, and the individuals need to find those opportunities, but we need to encourage it. Thank you.
Yeah, Johan, I'd like to agree with what Dr. Herman and Chantal has just said. I think that, you know, all of those things are very, very valid, and the point is what makes you unique in a pile of CVs. And the thing is, we live in a society where there's so much need. Even the smallest thing you can do makes a huge difference. So the point about, you know, going to do volunteer work, community work, social impact is such a big thing in our organizations today, in our lives today. Having social impact and being able to say, I worked at the community or an NGO, you know, up the road, and I did this and I did that, makes a person really stand up, because it tells a whole story about who you are, what you're about, what you think your purpose in life is, that you've gone and you've done this so that you can have that impact. And I think all of us as human beings want to make a contribution, want to add some value to this world. And I think our young people, you know, we mustn't also underestimate, a lot of them are looking at us as organizations to say, well, what are you as a corporate doing, or, you know, to make a difference in this world when it comes to social impact or social justice or environmental issues or community-based work or whatever it is you're doing. And this is an opportunity that we really need to explore, because there is so much to be done. And it's a wonderful opportunity to get another thing to be able to say, and you develop huge leadership skills in this space as well. And it's deeply fulfilling to pursue a passion like that. And so I just want to encourage, you know, both employers and employees to add more value, or to support and encourage that kind of approach to growth and development and learning. And yes, we have all the other things that we must add in. And I think that industry collaboration with educational institutions, and sponsoring our students along the way, opening the doors, all of those elements are very, very important to ensuring that we are successful together, because we cannot be successful in the world as individuals if if we have a huge problem like we're facing right now, and we have to come at it at all different angles and perspectives. So I just want to encourage us as employees, as prospective employees, as students, as organizations, to support people who actually go the extra mile.
Johan, if I may add, you know, this business of experience is a big one. Eh? I heard that it's a couple of years where government had said, no, we're not going to put that as the hurdle now. We're just going to employ people. Again, goes back to attitude. But I just wanted to relate this story. The year is 2000. A young lady writes a letter, a well-written letter, and just requests an opportunity to work for this organization. And I was in that organization. I wasn't even the head of HR, but I received this letter. And I went to it said, you know, beautiful written. I just want a foot in the door. I don't want you guys to be paying me. I just want to come and see, what does it mean when people say they are going to work? What is it that they are going to do? But here's the thing. She took the initiative to write that piece of paper, that letter on that piece of paper, and wrote it well. I mean, when I got it, I went to the boss. I said, boss, I don't know who this person is. I don't know why they wrote to me, but they've done their research. They know that I work here. And this is a beautiful written letter. I don't know this person, but I think we must hear out from what she's saying. Because all they want is an experience. We can certainly give an experience. She can come in here, but we must give an experience. She wants to see what we do when we say to go to work. She came, I can tell you today, she works at Woolies in Cape Town, in that big office there, and I still keep in touch with her because I was just so impressed when she landed in this space, professional, well presented. I'm not talking fancy clothes because she was a poor person, but just the presentation, just the etiquette. And today, well, as they say, the rest is history. So take the initiative, take the chance. I mean, the worst people can say to you is no. So who cares? Someone somewhere will say yes. I don't know how many doors she had knocked at where people said, you want to see what people do at work? We don't want to hear. But and remember, there will always be that small voice, particularly my HR colleagues who are on the line. Please take a chance on a young person. Just take a chance. And you will just change, so you might just change somebody's life. That's what I believe in, that's what I do. That's why I'm still involved in HR. Although today I'm no longer CEO of IPM, but I'll continue to be involved in this because it's exciting to see lives change. Give young people a chance.
Yeah, in fact, Johan, if I can just come in here and latch on to what Dr. Jerry said. I was listening to Oprah Winfrey in one of her podcasts, and she was relating a story exactly the same as what Dr. Jerry spoke to right now, that when she was, and that's how she entered the sort of area that she's in, communications, TV, media, and all that. She used to go to this company every day. She started by applying and they said, no, we don't have any work for you here. And her mom said, you're going to go there every day at the morning and you're going to arrive before all of them arrive. You're going to sit there. When they go for tea, take your tea, go wherever. When they come back, you come back, and the rest is history. Eventually, they hired her into the company and look where she is right now. So really, it is by identifying that and giving opportunity to that. But I wanted to come back to the notion of career preparation and say, in addition to what Dr. Erna and Dr. Zin said, I think for me, career preparation does not start when you enter higher education or further education. It starts when you are still in school. That's where you've got to be thinking about what is it that you want to do, where do you want to see your life going. And I think the whole thing around collaboration between business, between industry and NGOs and schools for that matter, is where we need to start this thing from, where we make it part of teaching and learning. In other words, it's not a voluntary thing for learners to go out and do whatever work at an NGO. It's part of your teaching and learning experience, and you are awarded marks for doing that. And I think once we do that, it also then begins to, because we're talking here about how we then integrate that into academic curriculum, we then begin to realize what sort of requirements are there that industry need that we can then as school integrate into our curriculum. So that link that I talked about earlier on, it starts right there where we expose these kids on a regular basis to go out there and go to NGOs, go to businesses, go wherever. The whole thing about when I was still at school, they would bring this auntie or this uncle from wherever and come and talk to us about this particular career. It's one thing to listen to an auntie or uncle talking about the career than for you to go there and be exposed at a practical level and see what happens in that particular space. Thank you.
Thanks, Constance. There's an interesting question that came through on the chat box that I just want to pose to the panel. Why does there seem to be a lack of willingness by students to take up free training? Is there a lack of willingness
to take up
free training?
We haven't experienced that, to be quite honest. I think people are wanting experience, workplace-based experience. We haven't found it. Yes, funding's critical for people that need things like transports, access to tech. So you've got to be able to set people up correctly. But no, we haven't found a lack of willingness in youth to come and engage in work-based training, and specifically for free. It hasn't been an obstacle for us. We've also found the university students exceptionally willing to work on big pieces of projects from corporates. And if that's for pay or not, that's also an interesting task to say, instead of giving, for example, a piece of development to an external, contracting house in India, why aren't we taking to our university kids to go and work on the piece of, put together a team and work on it as well? So no, we haven't found a lack of willingness, to be quite honest. I think the attitude in our youth is good. I think it's just around the right setup and connecting them with the right pieces of work.
Okay, thanks. I want to move ahead. We are quickly running out of time. And the next question was just coming back to a couple of things that we already touched on, like the importance of coaching, skills assessment, goal setting, networking, interview preparation, and profile review. Before we move on, I just quickly want to come back to this, because I do agree, and I think coaching is a very important aspect, and I think it has come out in our discussion quite a bit now. Role models, how to guide and motivate and inspire our youth from a leadership point of view. But I think let's just maybe quickly come back to that for a minute in terms of coaching. But my question would then be, how and where would the youth go out to find a suitable coach? I mean, is it just somebody that you meet along the way? Is it a family member, maybe somebody that you work with, somebody that you've met on social media or on one of the Instagram or LinkedIn channels? So how would we advise the youth where do you find the relevant coach if you are looking for some guidance from somebody in a leadership position? Where do you start? Anybody?
Yeah. Okay, I think that maybe let me start well, coaching is an important element of development. I think if we look at models of coaching, when we look at sport, for example, I think we can all resonate with that. Even the very best of sports people have a coach. So a lot of people also think that when they are assigned a coach, for example, in a company, that there's some deficit, thing going on, and why do I need a coach? I can actually do this by myself, So I think when we are now saying to youth that coaching and maybe even mentoring, because these are two different things, we mustn't muddle these two things up. But finding someone that you can have a safe conversation with, where you can learn from their own journey that they've been on, and where they can give you tools and tips to self-correct, to be, open to opportunities, to be and to build a meaningful relationship with a person that you think is a role model. There's a bit of all of that in there. Now, how to find a coach as a young person? I think sometimes we've formalized. There's an argument for formalizing it, and then there are the informal conversations that we have. Sometimes our coaches come to us in different guises, but we miss the opportunity because we haven't We haven't been listening properly. So, you know, and maybe I want to say coaching is more formal, it's more scientific, it's more organized. Mentorship is, I need a sounding board. I need someone that I can trust, that can give me some insight into a particular thing, and help me manage my way through a crisis. So we need to work out what it is that we need, and then we need to figure out how we're going to find this. And sometimes it's you know, you can find a mentor in a friend, in a family member, in a teacher, in an educator, in a peer, a colleague at work, and sometimes our own spouses and partners are psychologists as well in many ways. But the thing is to be able to take that nugget and do something with it, because it's like when those teachers sat me down and said you have potential, and I didn't go home and have the conversation with my parents. It would have been a whole lost opportunity, and my life would have never gone the way that it did because of that. There was such a key trajectory right there. It was a 5-minute conversation. We don't have to do a 1-hour session every month. It can be a WhatsApp, it can be a quick call, it can be, and sometimes it's very serious stuff that people need to share with you, and we need to listen, and we need to give and take in all of that. But sometimes we say, well, we can't find coaches, or we don't even know where to start. There are many organizations also that formally offer these sorts of things. And if you're online, you can go and find it. You can talk, you know, to people that are around you. And I always say to young people, you know, there's so many naysayers and doom and gloom type conversations that we have. We need to deliberately surround ourselves with people who will uplift us, who will challenge us, who will support us and enable us. We need to pick those people carefully, because we become like the people that we surround ourselves with ultimately. So we really, and you know, the quality of our lives is defined by the quality of the relationships that we have with people. So you don't just want to have a coach or a mentor because they're going to push you to the next level, or find you a new way to earn more money, or find you a job, or whatever. It's a mutual relationship of respect, and we show up, and we are, you know, you even prepare ourselves for these things. So there are many sources of finding people, and sometimes you know, it's a very simple thing. So we mustn't overcomplicate these things. And I think in corporates there are different categories of coaches and mentors that we assign. It's very formal, and in other times it can be very informal. But we must drive what it is that we want to, what the objective is, what we're trying to get out of a relationship with another person.
Thanks.
Johan, I want to add to this, and thanks, Dr. Zinn. I've seen that the current generation of young people find their own peers to be the best coaches, and sometimes I've also been in the model, and because I'm a psychologist, you know, students come to me, but the moment I bring in a peer that's been through the same journey, I can immediately see they believe the peer. And it's so interesting that in a way, what we need to realize is that our generation, in a way, disappointed the current generation because we didn't do so well. Look at where the earth is. Look at how things is not working. So they don't have confidence in us. So they, of course, and they are born with this hope of, we're going to change the world, and we're going to do it better than my parents did, or the people that's older than me. So I just want to say, you know, I've seen that, yeah, peer coaching is also quite an important thing. And yeah, when I've realized this, you know, sometimes I just ask a student, what would you say? And it often helps so much. Yeah, so I don't know as much as I thought I do. I don't.
Yeah, Johan, just one thing, particularly in a country, and I'm sorry to say as a man, where there's a lot of abuse, largely perpetrated by us adult males. I just want to caution the students, be very careful. and Johan asked a very important question. Where do I get these coaches? Where do I get all these mentors? Where can I find them? Look around, look for people that are honest. There are a lot of charlatans. We have heard these stories of desperate young people looking for opportunities, being taken down the wrong road and being molested, abused, and all that. Please be careful. But you can find these people. When you go to church, those of you who go to church, go to the mosque. When you go to a wedding, when you go to an event, a gig, people are introduced, and some of those people have these titles that you just look, what does this all mean? But they look like this, these people seem to be genuine and authentic. I think you take your chances there in a public place. You talk to the people, they come back to you, their attitude to you can tell you, can I work with this woman or this man? But that's what I would say. They are good people. It's just there is a small percentage that does this rubbish. So young people, be careful. There are good people out there, but be careful. Don't go in with your eyes closed, please.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Jerry. Then I think something very important that we haven't touched on, and we're really just about out of time. So I think let's just quickly talk about mental health of students on tertiary level. I think we have heard many stories of young people that's not able to cope once they've left their home environment and they're starting to study at university. And it's certainly of ongoing concern with reports of rising rates of mental illness, suicide among young people, and much concern has also been expressed about the mental well-being of students, specifically in South Africa. And what can and should be done to support students with mental health challenges? Glenda, if I can maybe come to you first.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Johan. I've got a radical approach to the traditional way of intervening, and one of that I would say what Dr. Confidence I think said, or Dr. Zen. So I think we've tried the authoritative method of intervening, of having a counselor and a student. We've had psychosocial programs that are implemented in most universities and colleges. But the question is, are they working? Maybe yes, to a certain extent they are working. But what I think should happen is to understand a student as a population from a psychosocial perspective. One of it is implement programs and that more like work integrated learning, where we actually not have workshops to talk to them about mental health and mental wellness, but actually maybe to take them to these spaces where people with mental disabilities are housed, so that they get to see the experience of how someone living with mental health, what does it look like on a daily basis. We can do this. I know it's quite expensive to scale it, but if we look at it from a faculty perspective, expose them to such spaces, and in there actually teach them on the symptoms, on the on issues of mental health, how mental health exhibits, what can be done, and what interventions can be done. The reason I think my work, or in a long shot, has a good ripple effect is that when someone has a lived experience or something, they're going to go home and talk about it. When I go and speak about in a workshop and speak about mental wellness and what I think, most students, truth be told, they are on their phones or they're doing things, that are not related to what is happening in the workshop. But if you take them and they actually become part of or maybe it can be 3 hours on a day-to-day life of someone living with mental health or mental illnesses, chances are that they're not going to relate to the educational part of the wellness or mental health, but also have to experience a lived-in experience of what someone is going through. Scalability, How can that be done? I think it's just moving the workshops from in-house, like at CTU, into the places where such people are housed. I know there are issues of confidentiality and but we do that with HIV, where people actually go do these workshops where maybe at the orphanage. What's different with mental health? So that stigma attached to mental health, maybe if we can break down into the actual experience these students should actually witness and see what is going on there. They can spot it in their neighbor, in their boyfriend and girlfriends, in their parents and stuff. And then we ripple down that to not a scalability of saying how much can students learn and take from these workshops with lived-in experiences. I think that would work, because most universities there's workshops have counselors, but a counselor and the student relationship, it's like an authoritative relationship where a student is coming with a problem and you sort of, it's a prescriptive relationship. But if we're looking at a scale perspective on how to reduce these numbers or mental health numbers in students, I think let's look at it from a work integrative perspective, where the workshops are actually taken into the spaces where people live with these mental health conditions. Or get them to volunteer. If you're an engineer, I think it's important to really get to see on the other side, on one day you'll be burnt out. What does it mean to be burnt out? What does it mean to live in such a condition? And then they go evangelize in their communities, in their spaces of work, and into their peers. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for that, Linda. Are there any thoughts on that question? Any other ideas or comments?
Yeah, Johan, I don't know how over and above sort of doing workshops with students on the issue of mental health, how can we reach parents? Because quite often parents are very ignorant to this. And I mean, I've had personal experience where my youngest daughter came and was complaining about some mental illness, depression, anxiety. And my initial thought was, oh, man, get out of here, go sort yourself out, you know? I mean, that's how we were raised. We just get on with it. And that's the thing and mentality of most parents out there. So you may be struggling with the students, you know, on how to deal with this. You don't have support at home. So how then do we bring parents into the picture? That support for these poor students. Yeah, thank you.
Dr. N, you want to answer that? Or?
Yes.
And I was just going to add another perspective perhaps around how we, you know, more deliberately foster a supportive environment that is inclusive, and where people feel they belong, and where people, you know, there's a culture in our institutions that where people feel they can ask for help, they have resources, and like you were saying, there are counselors, there are therapists, there are peer support groups, there are partnerships with other health facilities, where people feel there is a place to go. And then if you draw in parents and train faculty and staff on how to recognize symptoms and how to support people, and you really create a holistic approach that promotes healthy well-being and positive, you know, positive health habits as well. I think that, you know, we mustn't underestimate how serious this problem is amongst our young people, and that they often don't feel that they can approach anybody despite what we make available. And then we have a crisis. We suffer grief and loss and all sorts of things that happen that could have been prevented. So I think that an inclusive culture, a culture that is safe and supportive, and people and leaders that are empathetic, and you know, can give direction in situations like this, and are properly educated to know how to deal with it, I think is very, very important in these environments.
Johan, I just also want to say, I wish for us to be able to change the view on mental health away from the stigma, because it's okay to go to a doctor, but it's not so okay to visit a psychologist, or so I wish we can make that that transition easier. And I think there's lots of work to do, and even for psychologists to work with people in communities more, and be more friendly in terms of what is traditionally also more acceptable. I don't have the answer, but the other thing I want to say is I see how young people struggle because of loneliness and isolation, which of course leads to depression and anxiety, which we see almost, we see a lot, at the University of Stellenbosch, depression and anxiety, but often it has the root of loneliness. And it also, it's been there before COVID, because we're starting to be such a digitalized, society, and being, technology, sort of inclined, doesn't make us less lonely. It actually makes us more lonely. So so I think that's sort of a pandemic that we're sitting now after COVID. I don't have necessarily the solution. It's something that we need to work on.
Yes, just to sort of give an example, or maybe just to respond to what Dr. Confidence was saying, I remember maybe at some point she spoke about something, adding new market-related curriculum subjects into the curriculum. I think psychology and mental health people should start to learn about psychology and philosophy at a younger age. I know it's difficult to change the system, but if we are to implement this on a larger scale, I think it's something very important to look into. I know Rwanda, we almost did some project in Rwanda where they were trying to implement such from a primary school level. And it's a long thing going, but it was a very exciting project, because you're teaching kids from a younger age on how to, what we call in the streets, speak psychologically walk. And that then will trickle down to the parents and the communities, and then have a mentally better Africa in the future, I think. Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks for that, Linda. We've already gone a bit over time, so I think we're going to have to wrap it up. This is certainly a topic that we can talk on for a very long time. Especially mental health is most likely a discussion or a webinar on its own, and a very important aspect that we most certainly shouldn't neglect for any reason. And I think it is becoming more and more necessary and important for us to support our youth on all levels, not only education, but personal and mental health, illness and issues that I think that's far more prominent now that I think what we've realized before. But anyway, I want to say thank you for everybody. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you to our speakers for your valuable input and contributions. It's really much appreciated. And I'm sure our students, our CTU staff and other guests learned a lot. We shared some interesting thoughts and ideas, and certainly we can discuss this much further, and we should, in order to support our youth to make better career choices and to help them to secure their future careers. I just want to mention that we have recorded this, and the recording will be made available after. So if you want to share it with anybody that you think that might also learn from it or might find it worthwhile. And then I'd just like to mention that CTU is having our open day this Saturday. So if you want to come and see what programs and qualifications we have to offer, or if you know of anybody that might be considering a career change or moving into a different direction, please come and visit our campuses on Saturday, and we can tell you what we have available, and we can really help you to understand that it's never too late to get skilled, qualified and certified. CTU is a go-to institution for upskilling, reskilling and career development. So come visit us and come have a look. And then thank you very much. Thank you again. And until we meet again, have a lovely afternoon and a great weekend ahead. Thank you very much and keep up.
Bye.